Somewhere in America right now, someone is signing a 5-year loan on an SUV that's going to fall apart right when the warranty runs out. I've spent years digging through owner complaints, repair data, and dealership service records, and the same handful of names keep showing up over and over. Transmissions that grenade themselves, electrical systems that short out on the highway, and engines that start burning oil before they've even broken in. These aren't rare unicorn problems either. These are 7 specific SUVs sitting on lots right now that I would personally never buy. Let's count them down. 7. Nissan Murano. Kicking things off at number 7 is a name that used to be a genuinely solid, stylish crossover pick right up until its latest redesign quietly turned it into a gamble, the Nissan Murano. Here's what happens almost every time a manufacturer tears up a proven design and starts fresh. The early years become an unofficial testing ground, and buyers pay the price for that testing. The redesigned Murano ditched its old naturally aspirated V6 in favor of a turbocharged engine. And on paper, that's a win. Stronger acceleration, punchier response off the line. A genuinely more exciting driving experience than the outgoing model ever offered. But an engine spec sheet tells you nothing about how it holds up after 5 years of heat cycles, short trips, and stop-and-go commuting. And there simply isn't enough real-world mileage on this new turbo unit yet to know how it ages. That uncertainty alone should give a long-term buyer pause, especially since turbocharged 4-cylinders in general tend to run hotter and place more stress on internal components than the naturally aspirated engines they replace. Then there's the electronics, which have been the Murano's real Achilles heel. Owners have reported infotainment screens freezing mid-drive and outright errors popping up on the digital instrument cluster. Not a cosmetic glitch, but a genuine distraction and safety concern when your speed readout or navigation display decides to lock up on the highway at night. Climate control systems have shown similar gremlins, occasionally refusing to respond or resetting themselves without warning, leaving drivers stuck with whatever temperature the car happened to freeze on until the whole system reboots itself, sometimes minutes later. When a brand new redesign is already generating this volume of electrical complaints before it's even hit significant mileage, that's not a coincidence. That's a vehicle that rushed to market before the software was fully sorted out. There's also the matter of long-term ownership costs to consider here. Something a lot of buyers overlook when they're standing on a showroom floor admiring the new styling. Electrical faults on modern vehicles aren't cheap to diagnose, let alone fix. A single infotainment control module replacement can easily run into 4 figures once labor is factored in. And that's assuming the shop correctly identifies the root cause on the first attempt, rather than needing multiple visits to chase down an intermittent gremlin. For a vehicle already showing this pattern in its first couple of model years, that's a real financial exposure sitting quietly under the hood and behind the dashboard. Stack an unproven turbocharged engine on top of an already shaky electrical system, and you've got a vehicle that looks fantastic in the showroom and drives confidently on a 15-minute test drive, but carries real question marks about what year 3, 4, and 5 actually look like once the new car smell wears off. For anyone planning to keep a vehicle well past that 80,000-mile mark, buying into an unresolved combination like this is buying into someone else's science experiment, and you're the one who ends up covering the tuition. That's exactly why the Murano earns the 7th spot on our list. 6. Mazda CX-70, including the PHEV. Number 6 brings us to a brand that spent years earning genuine trust with reliability-focused buyers, which is exactly what makes this next entry so disappointing. The Mazda CX-70, especially in its plug-in hybrid form. Mazda didn't build its reputation by accident. For years, this brand has consistently ranked near the very top of brand-level dependability, right alongside Toyota and Honda, by taking a conservative, methodical approach to new technology, instead of rushing half-finished systems to market the way some competitors do. That's exactly why the CX-70's stumble matters so much. It's a genuine departure from what buyers have come to expect from this badge, and it caught a lot of loyal Mazda owners off guard. The complaints center on complex electronics, powertrain hiccups, and software-related malfunctions, the same category of issues quietly plaguing several manufacturers as vehicles get more technologically ambitious across the board, chasing feature lists rather than nailing the basics first. The plug-in hybrid variant is where things get especially messy. You're combining a traditional combustion engine, an electric motor, and a substantial battery pack, all stitched together by software that has to make split-second decisions about how power flows between them, based on throttle input, battery state, and driving conditions. That's an enormous amount of coordination happening in real time, and the more moving parts, mechanical and digital, you introduce into a system, the more opportunities exist for something to misfire. Owners have reported hesitation when the system switches between electric and gas power, unexpected error codes appearing on the dash for no clear reason, and battery integration issues that only reveal themselves after months of real-world use, not on a showroom test drive where everything is fresh and calibrated. It's also worth pointing out that hybrid and plug-in hybrid repairs tend to be dramatically more expensive than fixing a comparable issue on a standard gas vehicle, simply because far fewer independent mechanics are equipped or trained to work on the high-voltage battery systems involved. That often means owners get funneled back to the dealership for anything beyond basic maintenance at dealership labor rates, with limited ability to shop around for a better price the way you could with a simple gas engine repair. For a vehicle already showing early software and integration issues, that's a genuinely costly problem waiting to compound over time. For a brand that built its entire identity on getting the fundamentals right, generation after generation, watching one of its newer, more ambitious models show up in this conversation is a genuine wake-up call. It's proof that even the most dependable manufacturers aren't immune to growing pains the moment they chase more complicated hybrid technology to keep pace with the competition. That surprising vulnerability, tucked inside an otherwise trustworthy brand, is exactly why the CX-70 lands at number 6. 5. Jeep Grand Cherokee. Sliding into number 5, we've got a nameplate that's been a fixture in the midsize SUV world for decades, but one that keeps failing to shake off the same reputation problem year after year: the Jeep Grand Cherokee. The Grand Cherokee has always lived with a frustrating split personality. On one hand, genuinely appealing styling, real off-road hardware, and available interior finishes that punch well above the price point, making it feel like a genuine luxury alternative at a mainstream price. On the other hand, a persistent, recurring pattern of electrical gremlins and powertrain complaints that has followed the nameplate across multiple generations, rather than being an isolated bad year that got quietly fixed and forgotten. This isn't a one-time stumble. It's a pattern, and patterns are exactly what separate bad luck from a genuine design or manufacturing problem that keeps resurfacing no matter how many model years go by. This fits squarely into a broader issue that's dogged Jeep's parent company for years now: a habit of shipping ambitious, feature-packed vehicles before quality control has fully caught up to the ambition baked into the design. Owners have reported everything from finicky infotainment systems that freeze or lag to more serious drivetrain concerns showing up well before a vehicle should reasonably be having those problems, sometimes well within what should be trouble-free years of ownership. For a buyer drawn in by the Grand Cherokee's rugged image and genuine four-wheel drive capability, that's a real trade-off worth sitting with, especially once you're past the factory warranty and every repair bill is coming straight out of your own pocket instead of Jeep's. It's also worth noting how these issues tend to compound with age. A vehicle with recurring electrical faults early on often continues generating new, unrelated complaints as it accumulates mileage, since a shaky underlying electrical architecture doesn't just fix itself. It tends to reveal new symptoms as connectors corrode, wiring harnesses flex repeatedly, and software updates interact unpredictably with aging hardware. That's a very different ownership experience than a vehicle with a clean electrical foundation from day one, where problems stay rare and isolated rather than becoming a recurring theme every time you bring the vehicle in for service. Now, plenty of Grand Cherokee owners will tell you their truck has been rock solid, and that's genuinely true for some people. Reliability data is about probability, not certainty, and no single owner's experience overrides the broader pattern. But when a nameplate keeps landing on watch lists generation after generation, that's not something you write off as coincidence. That persistent, recurring pattern spanning multiple model years is exactly why the Grand Cherokee earns the number 5 spot. 4. Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. Number 4 takes us to a genuinely spacious, sharply styled SUV that unfortunately inherited some familiar baggage from Volkswagen's larger models. The Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. Volkswagen's infotainment and electrical systems have had a rocky reputation across its recent US lineup, and the Atlas Cross Sport hasn't escaped that pattern. Owners have reported everything from laggy, unresponsive touchscreens that require multiple taps to register a single command to more serious underlying electrical faults. The kind that don't just annoy you, they send you to an independent shop for hours of diagnostic labor before a technician even identifies the actual problem, let alone fixes it. Complex electronics and software-related malfunctions have shown up repeatedly enough that this isn't a fluke affecting a handful of unlucky owners. It's a documented trend that shows up consistently across the ownership base. What makes this one especially frustrating is just how good the Atlas Cross Sport is everywhere a reliability chart doesn't measure. The cabin feels genuinely upscale for the price, with tasteful materials and a clean, uncluttered design. The ride is composed and comfortable over long highway stretches, soaking up bumps in a way that feels genuinely more refined than plenty of competitors in the same price bracket. The styling has aged better than most of its same-era competitors, which increasingly blur together into forgettable crossover shapes that all start to look the same after a few years on the road. But none of that matters much if you're the one paying for a control module replacement or sitting through your third infotainment reflash in 2 years, right as your warranty coverage quietly expires and every visit starts coming out of your own wallet. There's also a used market angle worth mentioning here for anyone considering a slightly older, lower-priced example. Electrical gremlins have an ugly habit of getting worse with age rather than better, and a used Atlas Cross Sport a few years removed from its warranty period can carry hidden electrical baggage that a casual test drive simply won't reveal. A glitch that gets waved away under warranty at 30,000 miles has a real chance of turning into a recurring, expensive headache by the time the odometer creeps towards 6 figures, exactly the range this whole video is built around, and exactly the point where a used buyer is least protected from the fallout. That gap between how genuinely appealing this SUV feels to drive and how often it reportedly lands back at the dealership is exactly why it earns the number 4 spot. 3. Ford Explorer. Number 3 brings us to one of the best-selling 3-row SUVs in the entire country, a genuine sales juggernaut that's been undone by one very specific, very expensive mechanical weak point, the Ford Explorer. Transmission trouble has followed the Explorer across recent model years, and transmission trouble is about as serious as a reliability complaint gets. This isn't a rattling trim panel or a glitchy touchscreen you can shrug off. It's the core mechanical system responsible for actually getting power to the wheels, and when it fails, you're looking at a repair bill that can easily run into the thousands of dollars, plus days or even weeks without your primary family vehicle, while parts get sourced and the work gets scheduled at an already busy dealership service department. What makes this particularly worth taking seriously is scale. The Explorer isn't some low-volume niche model where 3 unlucky owners posting on a forum skew the whole conversation. It's one of the highest-volume 3-row SUVs sold in America, meaning the transmission complaints represent a genuine pattern across an enormous number of real-world vehicles, not a coincidence or a handful of outliers cherry-picked to make a dramatic headline. When that many independent owners across the country, in different climates and driving conditions, are reporting the same category of failure, that's data, not noise, and it deserves to be treated that way. They tend to surface a few years in, right as extended warranties are expiring, and owners are settling into the assumption that the expensive stuff is behind them. That timing turns what should be a routine ownership experience into an unwelcome financial surprise, often arriving at the exact moment a family has stopped budgeting for major repairs. Transmission durability should matter more than heated seats or a marginally bigger touchscreen, because it's the difference between a vehicle that quietly serves your family for a decade and one that leaves you stranded with a 5-figure repair estimate right as the powertrain warranty runs dry. A comfortable interior and confident highway manners mean very little if you're facing a transmission rebuild well before the vehicle earns its 80,000-mile badge of honor. That widespread, mechanically serious pattern is exactly why the Explorer lands at number 3. 2. Chevrolet Traverse. Number 2 takes us to another high-volume, family-favorite 3-row SUV carrying a strikingly similar problem to the Explorer, the Chevrolet Traverse. The Traverse has developed its own well-documented transmission complaints, part of a wider trend showing up across several popular 3-row SUVs in this exact size and weight class, almost as if manufacturers across the board are struggling with the same underlying engineering challenge of moving that much vehicle reliably for years on end without cutting corners somewhere along the way. Transmission failure sits at the very top of the list of expensive, disruptive vehicle problems, rivaling engine failure in both repair cost and sheer inconvenience. And when it shows up as a recurring theme rather than an isolated incident, that's a legitimate red flag for anyone planning to keep their SUV long-term instead of trading it in while it's still safely under warranty. The frustrating part is that the Traverse genuinely earns its popularity in every other respect. The third row actually fits adults without feeling like punishment, unlike plenty of competitors where the back row is really only suitable for small children on short trips. The ride is quiet and composed for daily commuting, soaking up rough pavement without transmitting every bump into the cabin. The price undercuts several premium competitors while still delivering a genuinely comfortable family experience, which is exactly why so many families gravitate toward it in the first place. But all of that practical appeal evaporates fast the moment the transmission starts slipping, hesitating, or throwing codes right as the factory coverage expires, leaving the owner holding a repair bill they never budgeted for at the exact moment they expected the vehicle to just quietly keep working. There's also a resale consideration worth mentioning here. A known transmission weak point tends to depreciate a vehicle's resale value faster than a comparable model without that reputation, since savvy used car shoppers increasingly research common problems before buying and factor that risk directly into their offer. That means owners who eventually try to sell or trade in a Traverse before a transmission issue actually surfaces may still end up eating a chunk of that risk in the form of a lower resale price, even if their particular unit never has a problem at all. If you're the kind of owner who plans to keep a family SUV for 8, 10, or more years, forcing an unplanned, expensive trade-in years before you intended, that real financial risk hiding behind an otherwise sensible, practical SUV is exactly why the Traverse earns the number 2 spot. 1. Chevrolet Equinox and GMC Terrain. And here we are, the number 1 spot on the list, and it's actually a tie between two nearly identical siblings sharing the exact same underlying problems: the redesigned Chevrolet Equinox and its twin, the GMC Terrain. The Equinox went through a full redesign recently, and it emerged with a genuinely alarming cluster of early problems that go well beyond a single weak point. And that detail matters enormously. Fluid leaks on a nearly new vehicle almost always point to a manufacturing or design flaw, not ordinary wear and tear you'd expect from years of use and thousands of miles of normal driving. Layer driveline problems on top of that, and you've got a vehicle showing serious mechanical red flags before it's even had a chance to prove itself over meaningful mileage, let alone the kind of long-term durability a family actually needs. Then there's the infotainment system, which has developed a genuinely unacceptable habit of rebooting or going completely black while driving at highway speed, often with zero warning. Losing your entire center display, navigation, climate controls, everything routed through that screen while cruising at 70 miles an hour on an unfamiliar stretch of highway is a real safety hazard. And there you have it. 7 SUVs sitting on lots right now carrying real documented reliability red flags, ranging from infotainment blackouts to outright transmission failure. None of this guarantees every single unit will break down, and plenty of individual owners genuinely haven't had these problems. But when the same complaints show up again and again across huge numbers of real drivers, in different regions, climates, and driving styles, that's a pattern, not bad luck, and it's exactly the kind of thing worth knowing before you sign a 5-year loan on a vehicle you're planning to keep for the long haul. If you're shopping for your next SUV and actually planning to keep it past that 80,000-mile mark, do your homework before you commit. Dig into ownership forums and ask current owners the hard questions before you sign anything. Let me know in the comments if you've owned any of these and whether your experience lined up with what we covered today. If this helped you out, hit that like button. Subscribe for more no-nonsense reliability breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.